There are many excellent carpenters, musicians, athletes, students, workers, and various other people. However, there are not many consistently excellent thinkers. So many of us struggle with having consistent, ongoing joy. Athletes often say that sports are 80% mental and 20% physical. Joy is an even more intense mental endeavor. Overflowing joy is 100% factual reflection and 0% circumstantial. In other words, when we think about the right things, there is always a way to find quiet contentment, regardless of people and circumstances. So Paul, as he's coming to the end of his letter on right thinking and joy, writes to us, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." I won't go into the extensive details on these definitions. Lovely is something that is pleasant and uplifting to think about. Commendable and praiseworthy would be things that are such great thoughts, they would be readily shared with others because they would be uplifting to all of us. Excellent is what is best for us and all around. We have to ask ourselves, how many of our thoughts would we want to share with the world? Often our thought life is clouded with dwelling on resentments, slights, the wrong we see in others, and is diseased with negativity. We dwell on others' mistakes, what we are unhappy about in life, what would make life so much better. Before diving into our most excellent thoughts that bring contentment, which are thoughts about God, let's think about the general life we live, which is pervaded everywhere by God's presence. All the streams of ideas, words, pictures that flow into the ocean of our mind have the presence of God stamped on them to some degree. The question is, how is his presence stamped? God is present in certain activities and thoughts in delight, openly blessing us. Elsewhere, God is still present, but only in opposition to us and confrontation of the thoughts that are taking us away from him. So if God is present positively or negatively in all aspects of life, then all areas we spend our time thinking on will lead us towards God or away from him, taking or adding joy. We must ask ourselves, does trolling Facebook articles, reading negative posts about people and society, watching talk shows that make fun of and belittle people and even God, late night comedy that makes a mockery of God and uses constant vulgarity, fill us with thoughts we want to share? I remember when I had ESPN on my TV and got into, for a while, some of the talk shows. One of them was by an individual, Stephen A. Smith, called First Take. The show involved a great deal of Stephen A. yelling over people and going on countless rants. One day I realized I was in a much worse mood after my lunch break at home. Why? Because I'd filled my mind with the thoughts of a ranting individual who was ranting about less excellent things. And now I was thinking about less excellent things and had lost some of my joy. Now, what about those things on this earth that will take us into a place of joy, that bring us delight, which we can thank God for? We think about a movie of reconciliation like Remember the Titans, and it inspires us to love when we would rather not. We think of snapshots at the end of the news showing people doing acts of kindness for others, and it inspires us to love. We think about the bravery and sacrifice of heroines in a book about a time in history like World War II or the Great Depression or some world catastrophe, and we are inspired to courage and noble acts of our own. Thus, instead of dwelling on all our friends, churches and coworkers and the wrong things that are being done, we can dwell on something else. We can think about the good traits in our friends, their love, kind words, acts of service. We think about all the times God spoke to us in our church and how His grace is allowing people to be helped. We think on beautiful symphonies, inspiring songs, acts of goodness by leaders, evils that God has toppled. All of these thoughts will begin emptying us of cynicism, anger, and despair. And streams of hope, love, compassion, and delight will flow into the ocean of our minds. But there is a much higher, more excellent person we can spend hours and days on end thinking about. There are no greater thoughts to think on than God, His work, and His promises for us. I recently challenged an individual to think about all the good things God had done in that person's life, picking one each day. One of my favorite things to do is think about all the ways that God has led me in life, which seemed by chance, but now I can see the pieces of God's puzzle falling into place. I think about God's love and the many good things He has given me. I think about how patient He is. We can think about God's wisdom, God's promises, God's power. On and on we go. Colossians 3 tells us to set our mind on things above. This is a deliberate choice to think on someone beyond what we can see in front of us. Why make this choice of thought? Because we cannot always change our circumstances, but we can always change our thinking. Let's think in a way that brings us joy and God the greatest glory.